welcome back to my channel, Simone here, and welcome to Vlogmas Day 6. So today I'm going to be doing my favourite book to movie adaptations. I have 10 to talk about, so let's get started. However, just before we do get started, just bear in mind there is a sun directly outside my window, like facing me, and obviously, as you know, I use natural light. It's just because it's quite early in the morning when I'm filming this and the sun is coming up, so I apologise if I look a bit strange, but I'm going to go with it. So the first one of my 10 favourite book to movie adaptations is The Lord of the Rings. Now, you might know if you've been watching my wrap-ups this towards the end of this year that I completed the second book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy and I didn't love it very much. But when I'm talking about my favourite book to movie adaptations, I mean that the movie brings something new to the book and makes it obviously a more kind of visible and sort of tangible thing. And I think the movies of Lord of the Rings are amazing. Personally, I think they're better than the books, which is a little bit controversial, I know. But that's just, yeah, I think it's more accessible, I think, watching the movies. The second movie is actually my least favourite of the three. I think the first one is probably my favourite. I haven't read the third book, so I don't know how I can't really compare the two. But I do think that generally the Lord of the Rings trilogy is amazing. I also think The Hobbit is amazing. I didn't put that on my list, but I kind of am including that in with this lot. So yeah, if you don't know what the Lord of the Rings is about, it follows a group of dwarves, elves, hobbits, all sorts of people, wizards, who are trying to basically destroy the Ring of Sauron, which is kind of being used as a sort of evil thing. I don't really know how to explain this movie. It's a very complicated high fantasy movie, so I feel like you'd have to watch it. But personally, I think the films are easier to get through than the books are. So if you've tried to read the books and you're not sure, definitely go and watch the film because it'll really help you. Up next is no surprise to anyone, and that is the Harry Potter books and movies. I have here The Order of the Phoenix, which is also a great book and a great film, but my favourite's probably The Goblet of Fire. I'm personally reading that one at the minute, so it's kind of out of the way, so I don't have it to hand. But I know everybody knows that I love the Harry Potter books and the films. I think when the books came out I loved them so much and I sort of was following them as each one came out, but to be honest with you, they're so good that when the films came out, I won't lie, I was a little bit nervous, because when you have an amazing book series, it can easily be ruined by a film that comes out and it's just not great. And although the films and the books aren't exactly the same, there's quite a few things missed out in the films and there's a few bits that are a little bit different, I still think they're amazing because they just really kind of evoke that like feeling and they have the same sort of sentiment behind, and although they're missing certain characters or certain things, I still just think they're amazing. And the world that J.K. Rowling has created sort of means that it can't not be amazing, really. That's kind of how I feel about it. So yeah, Harry Potter is definitely on the list. You all knew it was going to be there, so no surprise really. The third one I want to talk about is The Help by Catherine Stockett, which is a book that I read a couple of years ago and loved this book. It basically follows a woman named Skeeter who wants to become a journalist in the 1950s, which is not a usual thing for a young woman to do. In this time, the women generally stay at home and the men go to work and they hire black sort of servants or housemaids and sort of people to look after the children and to clean the houses, and it's not really expected of anything else to happen there. Now Skeeter, like I said, wants to be a journalist, and in doing that what she decides to do is she realises that the way that the black nannies and the housemaids are treated is terrible, and they are segregated and they have to use their own bathrooms in the house because the white women and men think that they're going to catch diseases, and it's just not a nice environment to be around. And so Skeeter decides to talk to some of the housemaids of her sort of friends and people around her and try and get their side of the story, and she wants to write a book about that. Now, if I'm totally honest, I prefer the film to the book only very slightly. I think the book was amazing. I just think sometimes some stories just play better visually. I think the help was really, really beautifully done. I think the actresses that played Minnie, Abilene, and also Skeeter herself, which was Emma Stone, I believe. And I think it was Viola Davies played Abilene, I think. And I just think they really helped that. They kind of just enhanced the characters that the books created, and I think that's when it's a good film, is when it enhances the book and makes it even better. So yeah, that's definitely what one that I would recommend. I think you should read the book first. I did, and then watch the film, because I think you'll get that, like I said, that enhancement. I think it's just, you can't go wrong really with it. It's a really good film and a really good book, so yeah, I would definitely recommend. Next up, I want to talk about the Hunger Games series, which I have read the first 2 books and I've seen all the films. I believe there's 4 films altogether, because the last book, Mockingjay, which I have here, which I haven't actually read this book, but it was made into 2-part films. So I can't really comment on this particular one, because like I said, I've not read the book, so I don't know how that was. I thought the films were okay. One of them, I think it was the 3rd one, I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I thought generally they were good. The first film to movie, so the Hunger Games, I thought was amazing. I know the Hunger Games is kind of one of those like cult classics that everybody loves and as everybody has read, and I just really enjoyed the book in general. And then when I watched the film, actually I think I did it the other way around. I think I watched the film first and then I was like, oh, it's a book, and read the book. I think that's how it worked. But I just think it's it's a very unique story, and although it's dystopian and it's post-apocalyptic in some ways, it still has that element to it that's a bit different than anything else I'd read before. I definitely am looking forward to reading this 3rd book, and hopefully I will do that very soon. But yeah, I'm just not sure how I feel about the last part, so the book's definitely going to help me with that. Generally, Katniss Everdeen, who is the main character, lives in a world where basically they live in 12 districts, and every year there is a Hunger Games, which basically is where 2 children, one boy, one girl, between the ages of 12 and 18 are picked from each district, and then they essentially go into an arena and fight to the death in a different scenario each year. And I loved the kind of like desperation of the characters, and I just really enjoyed seeing people pairing up and finding out their strengths and their weaknesses. And yeah, Katniss Everdeen is like one of my favourite female characters, so yeah, I'm definitely a fan of those, and I can't wait to read the book to see how I feel about the movies after that. Next up, I have an age-old classic, and that is literally an age-old classic, and that is Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which everybody knows, even if you've not read it. Pride and Prejudice follows Elizabeth Bennet, who lives with her, I think it's 4 sisters, I think it's 5 of them altogether, or is it 3? Yeah, 4 sisters, and she lives with her mum and dad, and now her mum is very keen on getting all of her girls married off to rich men, and I think this is set in the 1800s, so, and that's kind of the, you know, goes with the times, I guess you would say. And I just really liked the book in general. I've read it I think 3 times now, and I really love it. And the Mr. Darcy character always interested me, because if you don't know, the whole point is that Elizabeth Bennet meets Mr. Darcy and hates him on sight. He's rude to her and he's very pompous and arrogant, but they slowly start to kind of become more involved in each other's lives. And I thought that the movie that I've watched with Colin Firth in, which a lot of people have seen, I thought Colin Firth played Mr. Darcy really, really well. He had exactly the right kind of attitude in it, which I loved. Obviously it helps when he does the like wet shirt thing when he comes out of the lake. I mean, you can't really go against that, but generally I just thought he played it really well. And yeah, I just thought the movie was really great, and it really sort of captured the book and made it kind of come to life, which I thought was really great. And yeah, I'm definitely a big fan. I love how it also captured so 2 of Elizabeth's sisters, her 2 younger sisters, in the book they come across as really annoying, and I really felt like the film really just helped you understand that they were kind of girls and they were trying to do their best, and perhaps they weren't as annoying as perhaps they come across in the book. So yeah, I really, really enjoy that aspect, and loved this comparison between the book and movie. Next up is a movie I don't know how many people will have seen, but but I really enjoyed the book and the movie, and that is Along Came a Spider by James Patterson, which is the first book in the Alex Cross series. Now, you may know if you've seen my videos on this channel that I am reading a lot of the Alex Cross series at the minute. I think I've read 2 or 3 of them now, can't remember. But I'm kind of working my way through them, and Along Came a Spider and Kiss the Girls, which are the first 2 books, have actually both been made into movies with Morgan Freeman in them as Alex Cross, and I love them. I absolutely love them. I think that I don't know if I've seen the movie for Kiss the Girls. I know I've definitely seen Along Came a Spider. It basically follows Alex Cross, who is a sort of forensic psychologist, I believe, and he is trying to figure out, basically there's a very high, well-to-do private school where one of the teachers has basically kidnapped 2 of the pupils of the school under the Secret Service's nose, and it's about him trying to figure out where they've gone. And I loved this. Like I said, this was absolutely amazing. I love Morgan Freeman. He's one of my favourite actors in general anyway, so for him to play the lead role in this was just perfect. And yeah, I love James Patterson's writing in general, and it lent itself to film really, really well, and I thought it was a great adaptation. Then we have The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo by Stieg Larsson, which I really am loving the book series of this. I've got a few more to read, and the kind of adaptation or the continuation by is it David Lagercrantz after that, but I have seen the first film both in Swedish and in English. Now I actually prefer the Swedish version, if I'm totally honest. I don't know what it is about Daniel Craig, but I generally find I'm not his biggest fan. I think he can be good in certain films, but I don't really love him as James Bond either, so yeah, I don't know if it's just him or I just don't get on with his acting style perhaps, but personally I really liked the Swedish version of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Now this basically follows a man named Mikael Blomkvist, who is a Swedish journalist, and he has been asked by an elderly gentleman named Henrik Wanger to investigate and basically find his granddaughter. Now his granddaughter disappeared 30-40 years ago, and he still doesn't know what happened to her, but somebody keeps sending him the same gift that she used to get him. She used to get him like a pressed flower in a frame every single year, for, I think it was for his birthday, and she still gets, and that is still being sent to him every year. So he wants to know, he wants to find out at least if she's still alive, and if she's not still alive, who obviously killed her and is now taunting him. And it's about that. In the process, Mikael sort of takes on Lisbeth Salander, who is a kind of outcast woman who is very intelligent. She's also a bit of a hacker, and she doesn't have the best people skills, but they kind of start working together on this case, and they figure out, and it's them going through the motions of figuring out what happened. And I love this. I think the drama in it, the kind of suspense was great. I actually had already read the book when I watched the film, but I still didn't think it spoilt it at all. Even though I knew what happened in the end, I still felt the suspense. And the same, to be fair, the same with the English version as well, with Daniel Craig in. I don't think he's terrible, he wasn't Mikael Blomkvist to me, but that might be because I'd already watched the Swedish one before that, so possibly that's the problem. But yeah, I really enjoyed this adaptation, and I think that it's definitely one to watch if you haven't already. Although there is a very, very graphic rape scene in this, so just, if you're not, you know, if that's something that really troubles you, I wouldn't watch this, but that's just kind of like a trigger warning, I guess. The next 2 I have are actually both Stephen King books that have been made into adaptations. The first one I want to talk about is The Shining by Stephen King, which I'm going to be totally honest with you, I don't love either the book or the film, but I think it is a good adaptation, and that's why I wanted to include it on this list. So I think The Shining I gave a 3-star, and I'd probably give the movie about the same, but I think if you love The Shining book, you'll love the film, and vice versa, because they are very similar. I think that they do a very similar thing in that the suspense is there. I just didn't like the story, and I didn't think it was Stephen King's best personally, but then it's one of his first, I think, so it's not really surprising. Yeah, I loved the I think for me, maybe it's the hype that killed it for me, because I obviously know that everybody, if you think Stephen King, everybody says The Shining, but to me it's not his best in any, like, at all, and so I think that's where I struggle. I'm also not a big Jack Nicholson fan, to be honest with you, and obviously he's the main one in the adaptation. If you don't know what this is about, it follows a little boy named Danny whose mum and dad move into a hotel over the winter, where basically they get snowed in. That's kind of the whole point of it, but they're there to look after the hotel while the hotel's closed down for the winter, and I think they're there for about 12 weeks, and after they're already snowed in, they realise that actually the place is a little bit haunted and a little bit, something dodgy's going on, and Danny has this ability to see certain things. Yes, you all probably know the Red Rum chant, but anyway, it's a good adaptation, but I didn't like the movie or the film really. It was okay, but I do think, like I said, if you like the book, you'll like the film, and if you like the film, you'll like the book, so I wanted to include it on the list, even though it's not my personal favourite. And then the other one is actually Stephen King's first ever book that he released, and I personally prefer this one to The Shining, and that is Carrie. Now, I know there are a lot of adaptations of the book Carrie. Now, personally, I thought the book was great. I really enjoyed it. I did think it was a little bit... It's very different to what Stephen King now has written more recently to that. When I say more recently, I mean like in the 80s as opposed to the whatever, whenever he wrote that. I personally really liked it. I think the adaptation that I have watched, I think, was the one from like the 80s. I'm not sure. I will put a picture up of the one I've watched. I haven't watched the most recent one with, what's her name in it? Chloe Moretz. I haven't watched that one, so that's not the one I'm talking about, but I potentially would watch that one in the future. Oh, that sun's really coming out of my eye now. I'm sure you can probably tell. But yeah, so I did enjoy the movie and the book of this. I thought it was really well done. Again, this is a story I think that actually works better as a movie, only because it's so visual, and although I think Stephen King did an amazing job of describing it and making the atmosphere and making you think about it in the book, I just think that the film obviously can do that without having to say anything, and it just works in that way. So that's my personal opinion. I really actually enjoyed both, so I don't really have a preference too much, but yeah. And then the final one that I want to talk about is the adaptation Atonement. I talked about this, I can't remember in what video, I'll link the video below if I can remember which one it was. But I was saying how I first started, I think I started to read the book and I didn't really understand what was going on, so I sort of stopped reading it. And then I watched the film, which explained it more to me, and I understood it a bit more. Then I read the book again, and then I rewatched the film, and by that time I understood both really well. I loved them. I thought they are an adaptation that lend themselves to each other. I think the book and the movie together just have like a perfect partnership. I think they work really well, and I think that they just are a great combination. Basically, Atonement follows a young girl named Cecilia who, when she's very young, she sees what she thinks is the gardener assaulting her sister. But what she doesn't realise is that her sister is actually reciprocating. It's not an assault, it is a sexual liaison, shall we say. And so then that evening, Lola, Cecilia's cousin, oh, that light is really bad, isn't it? Lola, Cecilia's cousin, is raped, and Cecilia says that it was the gardener, and then she has to live with that for the rest of her life then, and it sets things in motion that are difficult to deal with. But I'm going to go now because obviously that light is terrible and I'm pretty sure you probably can't even see me at this point. So I hope that you've enjoyed Vlogmas Day 6. Do come back tomorrow at 5 o'clock and watch my next one. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys!